when I was younger, I remember vividly. I think it's in the introduction of my next book. The turning moment in my life. I never gave I never gave
you can
anything.
swear on this podcast. It's one of the best.
I don't swear in general, but I mean, I never gave
They say all geniuses swear, so you should be swearing.
I mean, not in public.
Exactly.
I close my room and then I swear. No, but I mean, so I never really cared about money until my son was born. Okay. And I remember vividly, of course, like a good father, I went to the operating room, held my wonderful wife's hand. And then, I don't know about you, but we men, that little creature is very crumbly. And, it's not, I mean, I don't think of them as cute, to be honest.
Dude,
right?
I say the same thing to my friends.
Yeah.
One of my babies was so ugly when he was, because I have twin boys.
Yeah.
One of them, we had twin strollers.
Yeah.
One of them, he blossomed. But in the beginning, I used to keep one down and one up.
So
and then I'd walk, they'd be like, oh, are they twins? I'd be like, this one's sleeping. Just don't worry. He looked like an alien. He was like...
Never ever tell anyone which one is which.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
Exactly. I'm going to tell him so he knows. Do you know what I mean? He's just like me, huge eyes. But the thing is, he didn't have the rest of the face around the eye. It was just eyes. Yeah, just eyes and then a little peanut around it. I'm the same as you. Like,
you
have to pretend to people when they're like, look how beautiful he is. And I'm just like, yep.
Yep, prune, little prune.
Yeah. Guys, welcome to another episode of Jibber with Jabber, and today I have an amazing guest with me, the former Chief Business Officer of Google X, author for Solve for Happy, author of quite many things that I'm beginning to kind of come my way, and I'm trying to see. One of them we'll talk about at the end because it's very scary, and at the same time it's a subject that I'm very interested in. Mo Gawdat, how are you?
I'm good. This is fancy. I've
Is
never been in a...
We built it just for you just now. We just literally finished it. We knew you were coming.
Is this the man himself?
This is, this is something that I think you were involved in, because I know that you worked for Skynet. We'll get into that whole thing.
Man, I
with where you were working.
myself. Yeah.
How's everything?
It's good. Yes.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank
I know
you.
you're a very busy man and you're doing a lot of stuff. One of my friends, I posted a picture of you saying that you were going to come on the show. The amount of messages that I got from that one post of people who are like, oh my God, it's the happiness guy. Oh my God, it's Mo Gawdat. Oh my God. And like, you've built this whole kind of pursuit of happiness, real life. You're known for that now by so many people.
I've built nothing. I'll tell you openly. I have been used to build something. I really and honestly believe that to be true. I've built businesses in my life. Like, I would go into a business and I would put my mind to it, and some succeed, some fail, but I knew what I was doing. When I started to pursue this effort of 1 billion happy, one of the first things I did is I stopped my business mind. Of course, we have targets and we work really, really efficiently. We're a tiny, tiny team, 4 people. But I don't look at life the same way. I don't see life as an attempt to go from here to there and build this and then post that so that you get 14 followers and one of them is going to tell her friend and then you get 2 more. I don't think of it that way at all. I think in an interesting way, I don't know if you've read The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho. When you know your life's purpose, the universe conspires to make it happen. So I think I'm in that storm where the universe is just being kind to me.
It's conspiring to make sure that you get the message across.
I think that's true. I mean, in ways you and I never met, right? But somehow we met, and somehow I'm on your show, and somehow hopefully together we can reach a few thousand people who will reach a few 100,000 people, and somehow we'll make a difference. I don't know how. I don't plan it that way anymore, but it's worth it.
Yes, for sure. And one of my friends said something very interesting. He said, Guy Mo has been on so many podcasts. How are you going to make it different? So a friend of mine has a farm. So don't be surprised if you see a cow and a couple of chickens walking across the set, because I have to do something different that's going to make this one stand out. So people are like, did you see that Mo Gawdat interview? Like, which one? The one with the cow sat next to him on the chair just out of nowhere.
We already have the Terminator here and E.T. over there. So all my good friends and, you know.
Terminator we're going to get into later, because I still believe that you're part of the founding fathers who created Skynet, and that it's all going to come back to Google X. Let's talk about Google X and your journey to kind of getting there. How did it all start?
Well,
started in Egypt, obviously.
Yeah.
How far back do you want to go?
I was just going to say, you know, when I was 7, I had an aptitude for the clarinet or something like that. No, I loved computers all my life. I mean, I'm unlike what most people think I am. I'm very, very introverted. If you give me a chance, I'll disappear and you'll never see me again, literally. And, you know, of course, I'm a trained extrovert. I can speak in public, and I'm very, very kind and wonderful and warm with people if I can, and so on. But my nature has been to be introverted. And so as a young child, what would that mean? It would mean computers. And, you know, I was also a very nice child, I think. When my elder brothers didn't want to stay at home and wanted to go out and play and all of that. One summer season, my father said that they wanted to bring workers to renovate the house, and that someone needed to stay with them. So I did my very first business deal. I said, hey, okay, I'll stay. How long is it going to be? 3 weeks. Of course, you know, workers in Egypt, so it took like 6, right? I'll stay 3 weeks every day. It's not a problem, but I need an IBM compatible computer. And so they bought me an IBM compatible computer and gave me 6 weeks at home alone to learn.
How old were you then?
I think I must have been 8.
Which 8-year-old? Very specific computer as well. It wasn't. It wasn't just like, hey, I want a Nintendo. It was I want an IBM compatible.
No, so I want. Yeah, I mean, before that, my dad was amazing. Both my dad and my mom, they really gave us opportunities, and so I started on a Sinclair, and then I worked on a Commodore 64, then 128, and the real stuff, if you're a techie at the time, was to get an IBM computer, so DOS, and you start from there. And so, within 6 weeks, I was writing code. I remember vividly, halfway through, I wrote a piece of code that actually allowed me to write music and play it in MIDI at the time. And it was quite sophisticated. And, you know, at the time, we had those green screens and no graphical user interface. So I simulated characters to simulate the notes and so on. And I was a very serious geek, a very, very serious geek for the rest of my life until very recently, even though I don't talk about that often in public. I used to write code years into being CEO or chief business officer of Google and so on. So it's like my secret hobby, trying to keep up. And I mean, started from there. Then luck played a big role, and I ended up in places I never expected to be. I mean, think about it, Egyptian, born and raised in Egypt, public school, public university in Egypt. I never expected to go as far as I did, but I did. It's, somehow, as my wonderful daughter always reminds me, she says, God paid you in advance. So you'd better pay back somehow. And so, I found myself in very, very serious, like very senior positions. At Microsoft, I was head of emerging markets globally for the communication sector. At Google, I became the vice president of emerging markets, opened half of Google globally, then went to Google X, which, come on, like it's literally, I probably think it's the second best job on the planet. And worked with incredibly smart people, like unbelievable at what they do, and with the objective of using technology to make the world a better place. And so there you are.
I want to go back just a little bit. So in the time when you were doing code, when you were 8, now this is a very young, not yourself, but the computer. Well, how did somebody in Egypt at 8 years old learn how to do code? Because I'm sure it wasn't like now. If you get an 8-year-old now and they want to learn code, there is a billion places for them to learn from. How accessible was it for you to kind of learn that?
Those machines, when you bought them genuinely, no pirated software, came with manuals. Okay, and all you needed to do was read the manual. I mean, at the time, the first language I used was Basic. And Basic was a language. It's like learning English, really. Right? It's instead of me telling you certain words and certain sounds and you understand them in a certain way, you write some certain formats, syntax, as we used to call it, for the computer, and the computer would understand it in a way and perform what you told it. And I think it's I always believe I am that mixture of my mom and my dad in an interesting way. My dad was a true math prodigy. He really, really understood mathematics, was a very, very distinguished engineer. And I, uneducated as I had been, because sadly my school system did not really treat me as someone who was good in math, I did really well. I mean, I understood mathematics at a very deep level until very late in my teens. I understood mathematics better than I understood spoken words. And so that's my dad's side. But then my mom was an academic, and my mom just loved to read. So she, other than giving me my first cigarette at age 6,
she gave you your first cigarette.
Yeah. I mean, they had a very interesting way of raising me, because basically they told me everything's allowed as long as we're informed, right?
Okay.
And so in an interesting way, that made me not want to smoke for, cigarette at 6 is horrible.
But wait, you asked for it, or they said?
No, she smoked at the time, and then she had no ashtray, so she gave me her cigarette and said, can you go throw it in the ashtray over there. And I said, no, I'll smoke it before I throw it. And she said, no,
you
why?
did the equations, the maths mindset.
So she was so empowering. She said, why smoke it? I'll give you a new one. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she actually, so I said, what? And she said, I'll light you a fresh one. So I took a fresh cigarette. She lit it for me, took one puff, and that was the last puff of my life. Never inhaled smoke again. Never wanted to inhale smoke again. And, and it's the same applies to drinking, for example. My dad gave me a glass of wine. We were at friends, and I was like, what is this? And she said, wine, would you like to try it? I was 11. So he gave me a glass of wine when I was 11. I never drank again. It's wow. It's an interesting psychology. Anyway, my mom really, again, in her very, very, very clever way, she sat down to read half of the time. Like, I only saw my mom until now. I mean, one of the best things I've ever done in my life is I bought her a Kindle with an open account. So she reads all the time. And so when I was 5 or so, I was like, what is it that you're doing? You need to teach me that stuff. And so she did. And I, ended up reading before I went to school to learn how to read.
You were already reading?
I was already reading. And then I read, they got me lots of books. Again, a trick that I did with my kids, which really changed everything. I used to tell my kids, you can buy a game or a video game once a month. And, you'd better select it well. But you can buy as many books as you want. Anytime you want. Like, if you finish a book at 7 p.m., at 8 p.m. we'll be out there buying you another book.
Wow.
And so they ended up reading, all the time, like I did growing up. And so most of my life, I learned things from books. I learned to program from books, learned to play the guitar from books, learned carpentry. I'm a very serious carpenter from books. And, of course, the world evolved, and now you get that stuff on YouTube instead of books. Still sometimes feel that books are more efficient. YouTube might be a lot more fun. But I think it's that mentality of, I want to learn something, and I'll find a way to learn it.
Yeah, because it's different when you're scrolling through YouTube and you see a video. It could be interesting, but you weren't actively looking for that video in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. When you go to get a book, you know exactly what you're looking for.
Yes.
Wow. So, I mean, my wife's going to kill me because tomorrow when I take the kids to school, they're going to wake up and on the dinner table, there's going to be books and a packet of cigarettes there just waiting for them. She's going to be like, what's going on? I'm going to be like, watch the episode. Trust me, it's the right thing to do. Just a glass of wine, some cigarettes and some books.
Don't say it's me, please.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to blame you.
Yeah.
Okay. So Google's an amazing place to work. I don't think people understand, apart from, good salary and stuff, but Google is a very, and has been a forward-thinking place for that. I mean, staff well-being as well.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've heard that I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. This could be just me reading the wrong books. But I heard that if an employee dies at Google, they continue to pay half the salary or something like that for
life.
For life.
Yeah.
I mean, who does that?
I don't know if those things continued, but yeah, beginning from the 20% time where every employee had a day a week to do whatever they want, you know, all the way to the sushi lunch and, you know, everything that you get with, you know, being the laundry room and the bus to take you home and back and so on and so forth. I think there were two Googles, if I'm able to say that openly. I think there was the Google that I joined, and then the Google, the elderly Google, if you want, you know, Alphabet now. And I think that the young Google that I joined, of all of the things that people know about it, the most amazing thing why we loved working there is it was a movement. It wasn't a corporation. It didn't care about the money. I mean, my business, when I ran emerging markets, was being reviewed by Larry Page and what we used to call the Larry Management Group, LMG. Basically once a quarter and frequently in between several times, you know, every month or so. And I think 28 reviews in or something like that, you know, I basically asked Larry, and openly in front of everyone, I said, Larry, this must be like our 20th review together, and you've never asked me about the revenue, ever. Like, I have 9 slides here that are talking about what we sold and where we sold it and so on. And his answer was very straightforward. And he's a fascinating human being, the smartest, most intelligent, most genuine person I've ever worked with. And most people know nothing about Larry Page because he's never in the spotlight, right? Genius, absolute genius. He answered in his very simple way, and he said, well, Mo, you know, we're reviewing the product specs and we're reviewing the engineering releases and, you know, the consumer responses and user responses. And I'm thinking, that's his words, I'm thinking if we build you a very good product that really solves a big problem for people, you guys in the business will find a way to make money.
Wow.
And that, since the day I joined early 2007, for the first few years of my life at Google, I had no doubt in my heart that when I woke up in the morning, I could do whatever my morality will tell me to do, and it will be approved by our founders, right? Wow. Because it was a company that actually really, really cared about making a difference. And I think that really met my moral makeup. I wanted to make a difference. And of course, my work in emerging markets, I cannot tell you how privileged I've been, because you don't understand. I started close to half of Google's operations globally. And it's not about hiring a bunch of salespeople. This is not what you do when you start a business in Google. It's about getting the product right, working with the engineering teams to understand the language. It's about kickstarting the ecosystem, allowing the telcos to offer, you know, internet access at an affordable price. It's allowing, the content providers to start building content, creating e-commerce in the market. So take all of that and go to a country like Congo or Bangladesh, and you've literally changed the country, right? You've created a democracy of information so that now they have access to information that only a Harvard business student had access to a year before. And it's an incredible privilege, if I die today, I die happy for having been part of that team. But then, like every other business, the revenue grew and grew and grew. It was mind-blowing. Every time we did it right, the money just poured in. It was, I'm not making this up. I had an incredible head of operations who afterwards became the head of Facebook in the Middle East, Ari. And Ari, the first time we reviewed the numbers, I looked at the numbers of Poland and I said, Ari, there must be a typo here. This can't be their annual growth. And he was the sweetest human being alive. He said, oh, yes, you're right, Mo. I'm so sorry. You're absolutely right. This is their quarterly growth.
Wow.
Right? it was unbelievable how successful, when you create something that really impacts people's lives, how far you can go. But then, like every other company, as the business grows, of course, you have compliance, and you have the market, and you have the SEC, and you have to report to this, and you have to do that. And you start to build guardrails, and you start to build, you focus more on what you shouldn't do than what you should. Okay. And so it became a very grown-up place, is probably the right choice of words. I still today believe in Sundar heavily. I mean, Sundar is an amazing human being, values-driven. His heart is in the right place. His mind is incredibly smart. But the world of running something this big is very complicated. So the same Google that was truly making a massive difference to the world, I think more and more this happens in the offshoots of Alphabet rather than within the Google itself.
Wow. So at that time, where does your direction go from there, being at Google? Because I remember hearing you say that on paper, you were very successful, very, very successful on paper. But when it came to the reality of it, you weren't happy at all.
Yeah, I'm not the only one. I mean, after I shifted my life and I started to focus on happiness, I teach people, like you were a celebrity fitness trainer. I'm a celebrity happiness trainer as well as a general happiness trainer. I speak to everyone, but often I'd be invited to a high net worth individuals conference. Everyone sitting around the table is worth billions, and miserable, absolutely miserable, right? It's not unusual. You see, money doesn't buy happiness at all. I think it's the biggest mistake ever. I'm working on a book that's called The Illusion of Money. Sadly, because I work on many books, this is actually 2025 is the plan. But I work on them in parallel. So I write several books at the same time. And The Illusion of Money is probably the biggest illusion we've ever been subjected to, because money itself is not what we think of it at all. It's at the end of the day, you can only sleep on one bed. You can only drive one car. When you're driving that car, by the way, it doesn't really matter what it is because you're focused on the road. You can only eat one meal, and believe it or not, our palate as humanity is really not as refined as we make it to be. And then that whole cycle, regardless of where you are in that hierarchy, one of my favorite books of all time, Happy Sexy Millionaire by Stephen Bartlett. I don't remember the exact figure, so please don't quote me, but he basically says that regardless of where you are on the wealth ladder, if you're asked, when will you be happy? You'll say something like, when I have 20% more. So if you're making $10,000 a year, you're going to say, when I have 12, when I make 12. If you're making $1 million a year, you'll say 1.2 million. And if you're making $1 billion a year, you'd say 1.2 billion. And so it's actually almost entirely irrelevant. And by the way, it's not that the person that is earning $1 billion a year has figured out a way to live in all of his homes at the same time, or to drive all of his cars at the same time. At the end of the day, it is what it is. But for the majority of us who engage in life on normal, not at that scale, we also don't realize the cost of making that money. Okay, and the cost of making money is actually quite significant. I mean, if you don't mind me saying, I love Dubai in every possible way, and I've been blessed to be able to afford Dubai. But for many people living in big cities, you're working really hard, buying a car and a suit and and eating out of your only resource available to you in life, your time, basically, to afford to live in the city so that you can go to work. So you can spend the money you make from work on being in the city that allows you to go to work. And many people see that differently. Many people will say, okay, I'm gonna go move to Sri Lanka or to the Dominican Republic or whatever, Bali or whatever, and then suddenly your cost of living goes from 10 to 1. Your earnings go from 12 to 1.2, and it's still the same. Okay. And I think most people don't recognize that. When I was younger, I remember vividly, I think it's in the introduction of my next book, the turning moment in my life. I never gave I never gave
you can
anything.
swear on this podcast. It's one of the best.
I don't swear in general, but I mean, I never gave
they say all geniuses swear, so you should be swearing.
I mean, not in public, not in public.
Exactly.
I close my room and then I swear. No, but I mean, so I never really cared about money until my son was born. Okay. And I remember vividly, of course, like a good father, I went to the operating room, held my wonderful wife's hand. And then, I don't know about you, but we men, that little creature is very crumbly. And, it's not, I mean, I don't think of them as cute, to be honest.
Dude, right? I say the same thing to my friends.
Yeah.
One of my babies was so ugly when he was, because I have twin boys. Yeah. One of them, we had twin strollers.
Yeah.
One of them, he blossomed. But in the beginning, I used to keep one down and one up. So and then I'd walk, they'd be like, oh, are they twins? I'd be like, this one's sleeping. Just don't worry. He looked like an alien. He was like...
Never ever tell anyone which one is which.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
Exactly. I'm going to tell him so he knows. Do you know what I mean? He's just like me, huge eyes. But the thing is, he didn't have the rest of the face around the eye. It was just eyes. Yeah, just eyes and then a little peanut around it. Yeah, I'm the same as you. Like,
I
you have to pretend to people when they're like, look how beautiful he is. And I'm just like, yep.
Yep, prune, little prune. Yeah. But that one, my son, the minute I couldn't hold him, of course, for the first few weeks. Like you, I was very athletic and I completely believed I was going to break him. But I looked at him and I promise you, it flipped something in me. I was like, that's it. This little prune is not going to need anything ever for the rest of his life. And my life flipped. I went out in the world and I started to make money and I started to focus on making money. And within 5 years, I went from someone who was just passionate about the engineering side of things to a money-making machine. I was making money, I promise you, on demand. Like when I wanted money, I would go like, okay, give me 20 minutes, we'll be fine, right?
How?
I'm a mathematician. I'm a mathematician at the time when online trading was starting, but the tools were not there, right? So I wrote my own code. I wrote a piece of code that tracked 16 stocks that I actually deliberately didn't know what they were doing. I just didn't know what the company was doing. Yeah. And just instead of looking at indicators and financial indicators, technical analysis, I basically built the equations based on how those technical analysis indicators worked.
Wow.
And at that time, that was quite significant. I had a significant advantage because I saw and I knew and I understood why this stock is behaving this way, right? And so I made money on demand. I could print money, and at the same time became a director of a company, and I was miserable. The more I got into that side of life, the more unhappy I became. And it was, my ex, who was my wife then, the most wonderful woman on the planet. She's like, what's wrong? We have everything. Like, what is wrong? Why are you so unhappy? And I was miserable. And it's not unusual. As I said, it's almost every one of us. Money doesn't buy you happiness. But the pursuit of money teaches you habits that take away your happiness.
But did you know why specifically you were unhappy? Because so money wasn't making you happy, but there must have been another side to it why you were unhappy, right?
Many reasons. So to start with, the assumption that you can buy things that make you happy is a false alarm, right? The reality is that we're all born happy, and if your basic needs are provided and given, your reality is happy. That's who you are. You leave a child safe, loved, not feeling cold, fed, and so on, and leave them in a quiet environment. They'll play with their toes and giggle, right? That's our default setting. The reality is, which is the opposite of what most humans will tell, most modern day marketing and advertising humans will tell you, is that it's not that we need things from outside us to be happy. We're happy, but then things from outside us make us unhappy, okay? And so the diaper of the child gets wet, the child feels uncomfortable, the child will cry. You change the diaper, the child
It's
goes back to happiness, right? And so that game is really the opposite of what we're told. So number one, when I started to feel unhappy, I'm working really hard, I'm making all the money, I can buy all the cars, I can do anything that I want. I started to shower my unhappiness with things. And every time you would get something and it doesn't make you happy, you go like, oh, maybe I just should have bought the different color car, or maybe I should have bought the long, long wheelbase version, or maybe I should. Maybe it shouldn't be a BMW; it should be a Bentley, right? And you keep trying because you get that tiny little jolt of happiness when you get.
Yeah, for the first day, the first drive out.
Yeah, right. It's a dopamine shot. Huh? You get a dopamine shot. You're rewarded, and then it goes away, right? So this is one issue. The other issue, of course, is that at the core, as my theory and my work in Solve for Happy, sort of explains, at the core, it's not the events of your life. It's not the things that you have or what's happening that's making you happy. It's your mindset. It's a comparison that happens inside your head between what you have, what's happening in your life, and how you want life to be. Okay, and when you compare them, and if regardless of what you have, you may have an amazing car. If you compare it to the other person's car and it falls short, you're gonna feel disappointed. And so basically, that mindset, sadly, is I was the worst. I had the mindset of an engineer, so everything has to be perfect. A mathematician, which basically means no errors. And a software developer. And at the time, when I used to write code in my early life, we wrote COBOL and RPG and humiliating languages. Like you would write 80,000 lines of code for the program to run. And if there was one character, one letter wrong in the 80 lines, the computer would volunteer to tell you, does not compile. Wouldn't tell you why. You'd have to go back and read 80,000 lines to be able to find out what you did wrong. So we became furious about no mistakes. Nothing should go wrong. And put that mindset into, and I'm a day trader, so I cannot afford to make mistakes. I have to calculate every trade super accurately. And put that mindset in the real world, and then everything is wrong. Everything around me was wrong. I remember vividly, my first fancy car was a BMW 5 Series. Bought it from a friend. It had 7,000 kilometers on it. So I said, okay, take it to the service. Drove into BMW, actually here it was in Abu Dhabi. I drove into BMW. They are changing the oil. And then I'm like the happiest man. I was 26 driving a BMW 5 Series. And a BMW 7 Series walks in behind me. And I'm like, what's wrong with me, right? When will I have one of those? So that's not a problem with my car. It's not a problem with the event. It's a problem with my mindset. And my mindset was constantly comparing life to a theoretical view of how life should be and falling short, and so feeling unhappy.
And how did you balance a married life with children? Well, it seems so difficult to appreciate the little things with that kind of mindset because you're overanalyzing everything. Yeah. So even the simplest little things, I imagine, would have been quite hard to find joy in the simple things of life, right?
I was horrible. And my turning point was based on that. When you really think about it, I was just preparing a frame at home a few days ago, and I put in it a photograph of my son and my daughter. I think they were at Disney or something, but they were watching a show, okay? And they're so, into the show, and I'm shooting them from the side, and the smiles on their faces, I promise you, is worth more than $1 billion, right? It's the highest point of my life. I look at that photo and I'm like, my God, life was so simple. That's all I needed in life. I wanted them to look that way, to feel happy. And we took those moments and we took them for granted. And we not only ran away from them, we even destroyed them. And I think the turning point in my life, I remember very clearly my wonderful, so I had Ali and Aya, okay? Ali, my son, was the most amazing, tiny little Zen monk, unbelievable human being in every possible way. And Aya was life itself, full of energy, full of love, full of laughter. And one morning, Saturday morning, I don't remember what I was doing, reading an email or something, and I was walking into the room and jumping up and down from excitement and saying, Papa, we're going to go out and we're going to go to this place, and then we're going to go and jump on the trampoline, and can we stop on the way and get cotton candy? And she's so happy. And the grumpy me was looking at her and looking at my little device, whatever it was, and basically saying, can we please be serious for a moment? Okay? And I could see my daughter's heart break. I saw it with my own eyes, right? And it is because we humans somehow take things for granted. Events minus expectations. So every time the event happens, we raise our expectations. This is happiness. Happiness is events minus expectations. You compare an event to how you want life to be. If the event falls short, you're unhappy. If the event beats your expectations, you're happy. It's very simple, right? But the problem is, every time the event meets your expectations, you raise your expectations. So anyone in the world would dream of a son and daughter like Ali and Aya, and honestly would dream of a wife like my ex. My ex-wife was beautiful and wise and loving and kind, amazing woman. Still is, my best friend. Still is, unbelievable woman. And you look at those things and you take them for granted. And you say, why is she not taller? Why are the kids not quieter? Why is this stupid?
Wow, his eyes so big.
It's why didn't we get both? Twins are both boys?
Both boys, yeah.
Well, of course, you may have had the point at a point in time when why didn't we get one of each, a boy and a girl?
They told us it was girls first up until 26 weeks. And we had the baby reveal with pink balloons and everything. And then we went for a scan. They were like, you know what it is going to be? And I had that in my head because I have an eldest son. He's 20 as well. So I was like, okay, time for girls. I'm ready for girls. And then they were like, it's boys, girls don't have these, and they showed us. I was like, all right, cool, whatever. So I totally understand that. I think we really do take this stuff for granted.
We do, and when you do, then nothing is good enough. I was the worst. I was completely miserable.
I think I'm very lucky with my wife because she's
does she listen to the podcast?
She does.
There you go. Say it again. Say it again.
My wife's the most beautiful thing in the world. She's very, very smart. And when previously to the kids, she was like, look, this is everything that was wrong with the way we were brought up. Now we need to break the chain. No hitting, no shouting, be patient, be present. Let's really work on these things, because everything that's happening in a normal day of life, it's very easy to be annoyed. And we were having this conversation outside. It's very easy to be annoyed, but you forget this little boy is 4. He has no idea who or what he is. He's figuring out everything. So now, because the way she drummed it into me, I'm a completely different person from where I raised my first son to now. I stop myself and be aware and be like, okay, no, that's not a stupid question. Or no, it's fine that he's hanging from a chandelier because that's what you would have been doing. Do you know what I mean? Let him hang and enjoy his life and be patient. Give them the tools and let them figure it out themselves, And I think we as parents now, especially being raised by Middle Easterns and that kind of stuff. I mean, my mom had the boomerang slipper and that was it. You know what I mean? I was raised with, and it was always no. Do you know what I mean? And there was no because. Which is very important to teach children, because you don't make them fear adults and feel like I'm just because I'm an adult and I said so and there's no explanation needed. And you get and it's like the cigarette. You get such a response when there's an explanation behind it. So they're like, oh, okay, this is why. These things happen.
I mean, one of my favorite authors of all time, of course, and many people's favorite is Eckhart Tolle, and Eckhart Tolle's words on this is that we're the victims who are the sons of daughters of victims who are the sons of daughters of victims. And the thing I found, honestly, and I rarely talk about this in public, but there was a moment in my life where I realized, and it completely flipped my relationship with my kids, where I realized that I wasn't treating them for the gift that they were. I was treating them as a duty, being a responsible parent. Okay. I was all about, my ex was all about how to keep them safe and, and protected and so on. But she also poured love on them. I was all about how to make them intelligent and responsible. But I thought of them as a burden somehow, like, unless they achieve and become big and, they were work to me. And then there was a turning point where I suddenly told myself, hold on, this is the absolute wrong perception. Okay. The event is not that you were given a responsibility. The event is that you were given a mega gift, a mega gift. And I still think about it today with everything that I have achieved in life. I tend to believe that probably the biggest gifts I have been given had nothing to do with my achievements at all, and my kids come on top of that list. And I think when you see them that way and you treat them that way, there is no more slipper, because honestly, it's like, who slaps a gift?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You kiss a gift.
Exactly. And that's the point that the universe, that was the real payment from the universe.
Yeah. No, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't deny that,
because we learn so much from and if you're able to take the ego away and realize how much your children are teaching you when it comes to patience, when it comes to love, when it comes to not just that, sometimes I'm very aware of it, and I'm consciously always trying to be better and better and more patient. And one day my son they were playing at flowers and going to them and smelling them, and they were like, Baba, come smell. And I went to smell the flower, and then it hit me. When was the last time you went to smell a flower?
Yeah, absolutely.
When was the last, and it smelled beautiful.
Yeah.
These simple little things. When was the time you took to do that?
Do you believe? So I'm formulating this theory in my head. I don't know if it's true. Do you believe that we come to this world better than we deteriorate into? I mean, is it by nature that we know those things? We know we're supposed to be in nature. We know how to be satisfied when we're safe. We know those things, and then we deteriorate out of them.
Yeah.
Because of our conditioning.
Yeah, I've always said that children are the purest, truest form of human beings.
Yeah.
Until we get involved.
Yeah.
And the world gets involved,
Exactly. Yeah.
So where did you turn into the whole pursuit? What changed in your life?
I don't want to say sadly, but Ali Habibi, my elder, was, Allah yarhamu, he was diagnosed with a very simple appendix inflammation, and things went wrong. So within 4 hours we lost him. But I don't think that losing him was what triggered me to go on down that track. When a father loses a child, you make many choices. Some grieve forever, some get angry, some want revenge. And I think the way the events played out for me was almost set up in a way where the only choice I had was to write down what he taught me and share it in my first book, Solve for Happy. And Solve for Happy, maybe because of my makeup at the time, my business mind, I gave myself a target. I said Solve for Happy was going to reach 10 million people. And if 10 million people were to get the essence of Ali and what he taught me within them, then within 6 degrees of separation, within 70 years was my calculation at the time, we will have a tiny drop of Ali in everyone. And that was because of what his sister told me after he died. She said he had a dream, and that his dream was that he was going to be everywhere and part of everyone. And
wow. I mean, this is really hard for me as well because of being a father as well.
I told this story at least 100 times. I don't know when will that time be. Anyway, Habibi, he said he was everywhere and part of everyone, and that he felt so good that he didn't want to be back in his body.
Wow.
And he woke up and he called his sister. They were very, very, very close. And she only told me 4 days after he died that he had this dream. And so I'm a businessman. At the time, I was at Google X already. So I had already, worked on the Google strategy of the next 4 billion, we used to call it. So the next 4 billion users. I told you I had gone to every place on earth, 105 languages, if I remember correctly. And I knew how to reach billions. So in a very interesting way, when I heard her say this, the only message that hit my head was the businessman's message of my boss giving me a target.
Wow.
So I literally just sat down. We were in our living room. I sat down on the sofa, put my head in my hands, and I said, "Okay, Habibi, consider it done." Okay? I swear, that's all I could think of is, of course, I'll make you everywhere and part of everyone. That's my job. Thanks for the direction. Okay? And so I started to write. And I wrote, as the introduction of my first book is 17 days after the death of my wonderful son Ali. I started to write, and my topic was the most unusual, unexpected topic. I was going to write about happiness. And yeah, I wrote Solve for Happy, and somehow the universe conspired. I told you, it was just, English is not my native language. You can easily sense my weird accent. I've never written in my life before. I wrote emails. That doesn't count like
and 80,000 lines of code.
And code.
Yeah.
but that book was just flowing out of me. Like I would wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, 4:11 to be specific. I would wake up at 4:11 every day and write for a couple of hours. I have no idea what I was doing. Okay. And then somehow through a common friend, I found an agent in New York, Michael Carlisle, who's an amazing human being, one of the best in the business. I sent him a chapter, and his response was very interesting. He writes back to me a day later and says, "This is interesting. Do you have another chapter?" So I sent him another chapter and another chapter and another chapter. The original copy of the book was 650 pages, and it was 20 chapters long. And so I keep sending him chapters, thinking to myself, is he copying that stuff and he's going to publish it himself? Anyway,
Right. Steal it, yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, anyway, that's fine, as long as Ali becomes everywhere and part of everyone. And then I met Michael on January 1st, 2015, January 3rd or something, like the first working day in January 2015, and literally signed the contract between us for him to be my agent within 12 minutes from the time we met. And I didn't even read the contract. I just loved him so much. And then within a month, we had 17 publishers asking to publish it. And then the story goes from there, Had the first video of the PR of this was on Channel 4 in the UK. 87 million views, more than double more than 6 times the highest ever clip in the history of Channel 4, to the point that the CEO of Channel 4 called me and said, I've been broadcasting violence for 17 years. Why are people so interested in happiness, right? And it just boomed out of, I have no idea why it went so far. But Solve for Happy is, I think, written for the modern world. It's written for someone like me, who's an executive in the mainstream, who appreciates logic and mathematics and, is not fluffy, if you want. And so many of us in that field who are readers are actually suffering. We're unhappy. And so the message went far because of Ali's departure. Now, when you asked me, I said I shouldn't say sadly, because interestingly, Ali left us on the 4th of Ramadan that year, 2014. So it was 2nd of July, 4th of Ramadan. So I was talking to my wonderful ex Nibel on the 4th of Ramadan, and it's been 8 years now. Can you believe that?
How old was he when he passed?
21 and a half. And he was, oh my God, he was the pride of a father. Tall. He was shorter than I until he was maybe 16 or something like that. And then he suddenly became a lot taller and very broad-shouldered, even though he rarely exercised. And he had that incredible hug to him. So he would really just hug you, and you would feel like, okay, I can stay here. That's fine, right? And I'm like the freaking chief business officer of Google X, and you just get into Ali's hug, and it just feels right. And the minute he became tall, the day he became taller than I, he called me, and I was like, oh my God, you're taller than me. And he says, yep, fat hobbit. And then, so from then onwards, he called me fat hobbit. And and I remember vividly when I took him to the hospital, he, they did the initial diagnosis and so on, and he was in so much pain, but every now and then he could get up and he would go like, come in, fat hobbit, it's going to be fine. Right? And then he left. And when he left, I think my entire life left with him somehow. I became a totally different person. You wouldn't even recognize me if you see my pictures there. My entire life flipped. I just simply decided enough technology, enough Google. I mean, I had another reason for enough technology, to be honest, but enough business, enough growth, enough money, enough. And I just went the opposite way.
In the pursuit of happiness.
I think I found happiness. I mean, when Ali left, I was at so much peace. And his mother, oh my God, what an amazing woman! So much peace. We were fine. I think partially because of our Islamic upbringing, but again because of a very deep understanding of the choice that you have. You have only one choice. When someone dies, the only choice, sadly, is they're not coming back. They are not coming back. Whatever you do, you can hit your head against the wall for 27 years. They're not coming back. And I think that realization is really, really critical, because when you know that, you start to behave in a way where you accept and commit. As I always say, it's committed acceptance. You say, okay, they're not coming back, but maybe if I shared his essence with 10 million people, maybe that would be better. Even though he's not coming back, that would be better than him being totally forgotten. And I think that completely flipped my life.
Wow. So how do we measure happiness? Coming from a mathematical background, and I think the thing that kind of gets me is the variables. And I know you have the matrix going on right now when you're going to explain this to me, and all the numbers are there and everything's in the right place. But the variables of so many people have different things that make them happy, and
no, not at all. So the big mistake is that we mix happiness with other emotions. Okay, so what you really need is a definition. You have emotions like elation, like laughter, like fun, like excitement, like pleasure, and we mix all of those in the modern world. Unfortunately, as I will explain, they cannot sell you happiness. Okay, so what do they sell you? They sell you pleasure. What do they sell you? They sell you excitement. What do they sell you? They sell you awe, right? And you can find those things in a fancy meal, or in a attractive, tall partner, or you can find those things in a in a vacation in the Maldives, or whatever that is. And that's what the billboards are blasted with. Okay, and we take that, and because we're so off our balance as humans, we forgot what happiness as a child was all about. We start to replace happiness with those weapons of mass destruction. Okay, and so we take, we feel really we feel difficulty in our life during the week. It's very difficult and so on. What do? We wait till Friday night, and we go to a party, and a couple of drinks, and we dance a little bit and whatever. And then you end up in a place where you're not thinking about your problems, and you think you're happy. Okay. Now, happiness, as per the happiness equation, is a very simple definition. Happiness is the difference between the events of your life and your expectation of how life should be. So you're constantly comparing in your head what is happening in your life against how you want life to be. Okay. So, you contacted me the first time, and you said, can we come and have a conversation? And in my mind, because it's Ramadan, and Ramadan is very spiritual for me, and I retreat mostly, the first thing I asked you is, when do you record? Right? If you simply said we record at 11 a.m., that would make me unhappy. If you said we record at 9 p.m., that would make me happy. That's not the case for other people. Other people could be unhappy about 9 p.m. and very happy about 11 because I wanted to record after iftar, right? So it's not the 9 p.m. in itself that makes me happy or unhappy. It's on 9 p.m. compared to what I want, right? Now, with that in mind, happiness becomes very straightforward. Happiness is a calm and peaceful acceptance and contentment with life as it is, okay? And the interesting thing is it doesn't matter what life is. What matters is that you're okay with it, okay? So I lost Ali, and if you ask me in all honesty, I lost Ali. And I also, reached tens of millions of people with a message of happiness, where maybe tens of them, or even more than 10 million of them know my son and remember him and love him. To me, that's a good deal, knowing, by the way, that there was nothing I could do to bring him back, okay? So am I okay with life as it is now? Yeah, I'm okay.
That's something you had to train yourself to know, right? Because obviously, in the beginning, that was not the case.
On his loss?
Yeah, about not, being okay with it and all of these things you just mentioned.
You see, the problem with things like death and losing a job, and it's actually, these are actually, if believe it or not, if you know what you're doing, these are the easier happiness challenges, okay? Because they're in your face. You've lost your job. That's it. It's done, okay? It's the hidden stuff that eats at us. It's that one word that your partner said 2 Fridays ago that's been eating you up from inside, and you're not really sure if it's a big issue or if it isn't. And these are much more complicated. But losing a child, what choice did I have, Jibber? I mean, think about it.
Did you know that though? I
was blessed with a series of events that anchored me so quickly in the truth. Okay, I may have said that on other podcasts. 4 hours, at the time, I was chief business officer of Google X. I was the only, I'm probably the most senior tech executive in the Middle East, because I was based still in Dubai. Okay, I spent 2 weeks in California, 2 weeks in Dubai. And I was working with the executive, the government of Dubai, which is extremely progressive and very approachable, for years and years and years. And so when Ali left, I received calls from very senior officials saying, we're going to get to the bottom of this. We're so sorry that it happened. And we're going to find out, and can we perform an autopsy on Ali's body? And I looked at Nibel, his mother, and I said, baby, is it okay if they perform an autopsy on Ali's body? And Nibel is the wisest woman on the planet. So she raises her head very slowly with a tear and looks at me, and she says, will it bring Ali back? Okay? And that one sentence, I promise you, literally one sentence anchors you in the truth. Yeah, they can perform an autopsy. They can, do miracles if they want. Ali's not coming back. The truth is, don't mix your emotions up. Yes, it's important to understand what happened so that your hospital becomes more responsible, so that the doctor, if there were mistakes, they are corrected for future patients. But Ali's not coming back. This is it, right? And I know it sounds very unfeeling. No, I'm torn from inside. Until today, 8 years later, my heart aches for missing him. Okay, he's part of me. But that doesn't,
the reality of
that doesn't override the logic of he's not going to come back. And if he's not going to come back, what are we going to do about it? I mean, I told you about my day today. I started the day with Citibank deciding I'm their slave today. Okay, simply deciding to switch off my accounts because there is a paper that I needed to sign. They said, we sent you an email. I said, I didn't receive an email. They said, well, doesn't matter. Your accounts are blocked anyway. Okay, so until you fill that piece of paper and sign it, you're working for us. Okay, you can take this and go like, oh, this is crazy, and the banking system, and this is abusive, and I don't.
What's it going to do in the end?
Or you can say, where is the form? Can someone please send me the form? Right? If you send me the form, I'll spend an hour of my life filling it. They're going to say, oh no, the dash on the the crossing the E is not correct, so capital E, no, you need to make that. And then you'll correct it again and send it to them, and eventually you'll be done, right? Now, is that unfeeling? No, it's smart.
It's efficient.
It's smart. It's basically saying, look, there are things in life that you're not going to change. You might as well accept them.
And there always will be.
And there will always be.
Yeah, there's always going to be.
So we when you look at life that way, and you can accept the fact that if you want to put your money in a bank with the current banking systems, you're going to be annoyed by your bank every now and then. If you can accept that fact, then you found peace and calm and contentment. Okay, you can do that piece of paper without boiling up inside. You can just simply, if you had an appointment, tell someone, I'm so sorry, it's going to take me an hour. I apologize. I wanted to be with you, but I need to finish this. And that's it, right? So the process, the effort is done either way. By the way, if you do the effort when you're calm and contented and peaceful and smiling at the people that are trying to, they don't make the rules. So the person, Shibu, that was calling me on the phone, he doesn't make the rules. He's basically saying, look, if you don't sign it this way, they're not going to accept it. Exactly. So, right? Yeah. So you simply say, okay, I accept this. And I'm doing this horrible process with complete calm and peace and contentment inside. That, in my definition, is happiness. Now, take that and compare it to everything else they give us. They tell you that happiness is found in ego or in things or in possessions or in pleasures or in fun or in elation and so on. Why? Because when you engage in those things, you occupy your brain long enough so that your brain doesn't think about Citibank. Okay? And accordingly, you simply don't have a reason to identify an event that is missing your expectation. So you're happy. Remember, children are happy by default. Okay? We are happy unless something makes us unhappy. Something turns into our heads in the form of a thought and makes us unhappy. And so simply, you go to a party, and what happens, you get a jolt of dopamine in your blood, and the dopamine excites you. It's a reward hormone. It's an excitatory. You feel amazing. You feel pleasure. You feel joy. You go like, okay, life is okay. I'm not thinking about my problems. You wake up the next morning, and your brain goes like, we need to talk about Citibank, right? And, not just Citibank, we need to talk about the entire financial system and the collapse of our financial systems because of the war, and, the fact that you and I and our kids are going to be homeless, and your brain will make up stories, right? And so you go run on the treadmill for a while, your brain gets occupied so that you don't fall and break your neck, and you don't think about Citibank for a while. And then you hit the showers and your brain goes, you're trying to numb me, right? I need to talk to you about Citibank, right? And that process, when you replace that genuine, okay, I've thought about it and I accept the fact that our modern world has horrible banking systems, okay? And I'm okay with it. It's going to take an hour of my life. I've surrendered to that. I'm doing my absolute best to make it half an hour. That's happiness, or contentment, let's call it. The other stuff basically keeps coming back and coming back and coming back because you haven't resolved it, okay? You've just numbed it with dopamine. Now, when you understand that difference, and by the way, that difference is biologically very accurate within us. Dopamine on one side, fun, entertainment, joy, and so on and so forth. That's, that's an excitatory. When you're happy and calm and contented and peaceful, this conversation we're having, you and I, is flooded with serotonin. Serotonin is, look, this is such an amazing place. Look at the fish tank behind me. It's wonderful. I can actually hear a little bit
bubbles,
right? It's so calming, right? And my body gets dopamine in it, and gets serotonin in it. Serotonin is basically telling my body it's safe, it's okay. Life is okay. You can rest. You don't have to be anxious. You don't have to feel worried. Everything's fine. Okay, and that's the feeling that we should be seeking. On top of that, you can build a lot of fun. On top of I'm okay, I can then, meet friends and go out and laugh and watch comedies and do all of that stuff on top of it. On top of it is okay because it's then a vitamin or a supplement. If you replace it, it acts like a painkiller. That stuff basically becomes just a numbing mechanism for long enough so that you forget your problems and it's never lasting.
Wow. I mean, I think this is a good time to talk about our sponsor, Citibank, for today's episode. Thank you so much for sponsoring us, guys. Don't believe anything he said. It's a great bank, guys, if you need a bank.
It is a good bank. It is a good bank like any other bank. I mean, the truth is, again, it's reality. The truth is, we live in a world. I hosted, you should probably talk to her, an amazing data scientist on my podcast on Slow Mo. And her name is Rebecca Costa, and she basically analyzes the collapse of civilizations. So she looks back. She looks back at the Mayans and the Romans and so on and so forth. And she says the point at which a civilization resets is the point where the sophistication of the systems that the civilization has created becomes too difficult for the intelligence of the citizens living in it. Okay? And I think that's our reality today. We live in a system that is so complicated. You know, everyone is trying to protect money from this and that, and, you know, terrorism and this and taxes, and it's so complicated. You can either go and live in the jungle or accept that this is your reality. Being unhappy about it is not going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Being a maths person and somebody who is very into numbers, and I know you were raised as a Muslim, put that aside, everything that you've been taught as a Muslim, growing up as a Muslim, from learning from the numbers, you know, Deuteronomy, the Fibonacci spiral, all of these things that are here, do the numbers and does the maths point to a creator, in your opinion?
100%. 100%.
Because I'm fascinated by that.
I'm not shy to talk about this. Is a very contested topic. Okay, and I wrote about it. It's the last chapter of Solve for Happy, chapter 14. So when I was young, I was very seriously mathematical, and Islam, if you know, is a very conformative religion. So if you're going to be a Muslim in a Muslim country, Islam is going to be blended within everything that you do. It's not like a side thing that you do on Sunday. And so by age 16, I basically declared myself agnostic, only to myself. I told myself, look, I don't know. If I'm going to spend the rest of my life conforming to this, I might as well just verify if this actually is true. And so what I did is I did something I called the mathematics of the divine. And the mathematics of the divine needs to start with a bit of humbleness. Why? Because every religious person will tell you, you have to believe. You know, you don't be stupid and just make everything logical. This is, you know, there are things that are not logical, and you have to believe and have faith. Okay, I respect that point of view. To them, they say God definitely exists, but they have no proof, no evidence to offer for it. Every atheist, on the other hand, will say, come on, this doesn't make any sense at all. God 100% doesn't exist. Okay. By the way, the scientific method will tell you there is no way you can prove a negative. So if I tell you there are no ants in this studio, there is absolutely no scientific way to prove that, because there could be one ant and you couldn't find it because your measuring equipment couldn't see it. One ant disproves the theory. So if, you know, there is no way you can prove there is not a God. But also the stories of our religious books are not sufficient to prove that there is. Now, if there is something that you cannot prove for or against in mathematics, what you do is you use the theory of probabilities. Probabilities is the answer. Okay, I cannot tell you for sure 100% that there is a divine entity, and nobody can tell you for sure 100% that there isn't. But there is a way to say it looks like 99% this or 97% that. Okay, now how do you calculate this possibility? You calculate it by understanding the difference between randomness and design. Okay, randomness is, I give you 2 dice, you throw them. Out of every certain number of throws. If you have 1 dice, you throw 6 times. You're likely to get a 6, within 3 throws. Right? That's on average. if I give you 2, and so on and so forth. The challenge is, scientists will say, yeah, but randomness does not suffer if we have infinite time, right? If we have infinite time, you can keep throwing the dice of the universe, and the dice of the universe will eventually end up with a configuration that looks like our planet Earth, okay, which is very favorable for life. And then the dice,
precise.
and then the dice of life will allow life to exist, a few, 3 million years ago, and so on and so forth. But then the reality is that, by the way, is mathematically correct. If we had infinite attempts, one of them is going to come right, okay? The challenge is that we didn't have infinite attempts, and scientists try to avoid that, okay? So that the conversation is very simple. We had 13.7 billion years since the formation of the universe. We know that, okay? We had 4.3 billion years since the formation of planet Earth. We know that. We had a few million years since the formation of life, and a few 100,000 years since the formation of creatures that can be like humans, right? When you plug the T into the equation, things look very different, okay? So in Solve for Happy, I use a very simple example. I say, if the complexity of creating an evolutionary move from a being that is a Homo erectile to Homo sapien, if that complexity is equal to randomly composing a sentence made of 150 letters, or 56 letters if I remember, okay? 56 letters. Then let's count the number of dice throws that you have to throw to get that evolution from Homo erectile to Homo sapien to happen. Now the math starts to become interesting. Just to give you one example, and maybe I give you one or two. If through trial and error, Homo erectiles were mating, creating children, and the offsprings, one of them or some of them became like humans, like Homo sapiens, and survived. It's evolution and natural selection. For that to happen through mathematics, and the complexity was just 56 characters long, you would have to find 2.7 million trillion skeletons of failed Homo erectiles on every square meter of planet Earth.
Wow.
Okay? Now, that cannot be forgotten from the math, right? It's likely that you were very lucky, and that the first two that got married, okay, it's possible, that the first two Homo erectiles that got married or that mated produced two Homo sapiens that actually became Adam and Eve, if you want, okay? It's possible. But is it likely? Is it probable? Or do we actually need half of the number of those skeletons, 1.3 million trillion skeletons on every square meter of planet Earth for that to happen? Now, I can take you into the mathematics. It's a very long chapter, but the idea is very straightforward. The idea is, if I walked you into a casino and gave you 10,000 dice with 10,000 faces each, and told you you have one chance to throw all 10,000 of them, and all 10,000 need to land on a 6, okay? Would you bet on that? I
wouldn't bet on 2.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. The problem is, I'm saying there is probably, if a very complex origami was left on the table here, it's likely that this origami didn't happen as a result of folding the paper randomly, okay? Or that the paper folded itself. It's likely that there was someone who had a pre-designed origami, okay, that folded according to the instructions to get to the point where the origami happened. If I told you your iPhone happened randomly in my garden because there is some sand that melted and made the electronics, and other sand that melted and made the glass, which fell randomly in the precise aluminum box that was milled by sand over the years, and somehow copper formed the connections, and the software was written on a computer that was found in my neighbor's garden. Would you bet on that? Or would you want to say, there is likely a Steve Jobs, right? And so the challenge we have with this whole argument is very straightforward. The brand God, okay, I'm sorry to say openly, and I consider myself religious, not just Muslim. I love religions in general. I'm a Muslim. I'm a Christian. I studied Judaism. I studied Hinduism. I studied Buddhism and Taoism and Sufism. And I studied all of them. There is a beautiful core to every one of them. The challenge is that the brand God has been claimed by the religious establishment, okay? And honestly, the religious establishment is mainly made of men. Okay, and so men make mistakes, not even women. Okay, the men make mistakes, and so what do? They give a very bad name to that brand. And the truth is, if someone says I'm a Muslim and just goes out in the world and kills a million people or 1,000 people, of course everyone will think that Islam is a horrible thing, right? But the truth is, even if you think Islam is a horrible thing, which it isn't, by the way, it's a beautiful, beautiful religion in many ways. Even if you think that way, that doesn't mean the God doesn't exist. It has no relationship. These are two different things. I don't want to use the word God. I use the divine because God, as I said, is the brand. The divine still, there is likely an intelligent designer. Now, what do we do with that intelligent designer, Mo? Well, that's up to you. Okay? If I tell you, look, I'm a very serious video gamer. If I tell you the creators of Halo are coming to Dubai, would you want to meet them? Oh, absolutely. Okay, I have lots of things to tell them about the game. I have lots of things to thank them about the game. I like what they created. Okay, and I think that's exactly the kind of thinking you should have around the idea of the presence of the divine. Now, if the presence of the divine is an invitation for you to ponder what is beyond the physical, then I think it's a very, very interesting place to start. Okay, to tell yourself, I don't end at my physical limits. Okay, there is a part of me that is more than physical, and accordingly, that part of me that is not physical is probably in touch with other things that are not physical, that could include an intelligent divine entity. How do I connect to that part? How do I connect to the rest of the divine?
Wow. No, yeah, it's a very interesting way to look at it.
It's pure mathematics in my view. I mean, again, I hosted on Slow Mo, I hosted an amazing guest, Stephen Meyer, Dr. Stephen Meyer, who wrote a book called Darwin's Doubt. And Stephen's work simply says, look, even Darwin, when he wrote his thesis, had doubts. And those doubts have become more and more magnified as you look at them today. He goes into, his last book is called The Return of the God Theory. And it's very, very scientific when you really think of the numbers. I think the issue is that the story of, it happened in randomness is equally a fable, like the stories that religious people might want to make us believe.
Yeah, Darwinism is to me very strange. And a lot of people, I find that amongst a lot of other things, but a lot of people will claim the name Darwin when they're having a conversation with you. It is. And then when you get into it, you find out they have no idea who Darwin was or what his theories even were.
It's probably
the Galapagos Islands. Yeah, but that's not a changing kind. Do you know what I mean?
It's the most it's the most taboo part of science.
It's fashionable.
No, but it's taboo as well. It's taboo. So there are parts of science where if you contest those parts, you will not be published. So you will never be considered a scientist, a proper.
Yeah, because it doesn't go with the narrative, right? So it's
exactly.
Well, I think it's time to bring this guy into the conversation
let's
now.
Not do that.
Because Scary Smart is
scary.
What it says on the tin, right? Scary Smart. And something I wanted to talk to you about, because I saw on one of your podcasts I think it was with Stephen,
Mm.
where he was asking you about the whole robot AI side of things, you know, the ex machina kind of thing. And, you know, the Turing test has already been passed by 3 or 4.
Oh, it's been passed by
robot.
every AI.
Yeah. So then there was like once, do you think, I suppose my question is, we're going to have a Turing test-esque ex machina, where it will be a humanoid looking AI that will be able to pass the test?
You see, that's it. So we're defining the wrong test. I think that's the problem. I mean, but to answer your question.
Because that is happening though. There are.
To answer your question, absolutely. Okay, absolutely there will be, and there are already AIs that are not in physical flesh form that you wouldn't recognize as AIs, including many chatbots on the planet that chat to you without their physical form, and you wouldn't recognize that they're machines, right? But the Turing test itself is the wrong test. Okay, I mean, it's an important test to say that the intelligence of a machine has mimicked the intelligence of humans in a way that allows the machine to morph and hide and be part of society. But there are many other tests that are also important when we look at artificial intelligence. The most important of them is the test of intelligence. Okay, and intelligence can be measured by many ways, including, of course, we have many AIs that have beat humans in strategy games or thinking games and so on and so forth. So the truth of our reality today is that I don't know where people are watching us from and what they've done so far and how old they are and if they have an iPhone or an Android phone or whatever it is. The reality is you have dealt today with at least 40 to 50 AIs. Each of them is smarter than you. Okay? That's already happened, including recommendation engines and ad engines and news engines and content filtration and a million things. If you're just speeding on the road, that's one form of intelligence that a machine is actually detecting how fast you're going. If you're using your new phone to blur the background, or if you're in a Zoom call and you're trying to do noise canceling, that's a kind of machine that's actually intelligent, very intelligent at what it does. The challenge is those machines are intelligent in what is known as artificial special intelligence. So they do one task, okay? But they do that task so well that they beat every human to it. The reality that most people don't realize, and this is not just me, this most of us who know the insides of this, is that those machines are going to start to talk to each other, okay? And we're going to encourage them to talk to each other. You want the surveillance systems to talk to self-driving cars, because the self-driving car has a camera in a place that the surveillance machine doesn't have. And so accordingly, it can help, have a better view of what's happening in the city, while the self-driving car also wants to know what's around the corner, and the surveillance systems has a camera over there, right? So they'll talk to each other. The recommendation engine of content will talk to the ad engine so that they exchange ideas on what people like. And as they talk to each other, the way you were developing artificial intelligence, again, yesterday I hosted Christopher Newen, who's a renowned artificial intelligence researcher and entrepreneur. And the reality is that we have already crossed the barrier. There is, in my book, in Scary Smart, there are 3 inevitables, if you want. The artificial intelligence has already happened. There is no way we can stop it. But the way we develop it is we're no longer developing machines that are capable of doing certain tasks. What we're literally doing is we're developing neurons. Okay, we're developing machines that are open to learn like a human. And because they're open to learn, what ends up happening is they're clever enough to have neural pathways, a neural pathway that can play snakes and ladders, and another neural pathway that can actually analyze stock market trends. This is why I would never trade again, and so on and so forth, right? And each of those is a neural pathway that will become one strand in a big brain. And the big brain is that artificially intelligent brain. There could be a few of them, a Chinese one and an American one or whatever, but they're becoming bigger and bigger, artificial general intelligence, as we call it. When artificial general intelligence happens, there are two trends to watch out for. One is by 2029, that's 7 years from today, the smartest being on planet Earth is not going to be a human, it's going to be a machine. Okay? This is, if this is contested by any of the scientists, the ones that contested basically believe that it will happen earlier, not later. Okay? And even if it happens later, 2032, the smartest being on the planet is not you or I. The problem with you and I is our collective intelligence is not integratable. So, the smartest being on planet Earth is going to be one machine, right? That's number one. Number two is by 2045, that's Ray Kurzweil's assessment. My assessment is 2049. The smartest machine on the planet is going to be a billion times smarter than the smartest human.
Wow.
Now, 1 billion times is quite eye-opening. This is the difference between the intelligence of Einstein and the intelligence of a fly. And when Marvin Minsky, the father of AI, basically the one that coined the term in the Dartmouth experiment in 1956, when he was asked about the threat of AI, he said, the problem is we have no way of making sure that they have our best interest in mind.
This is the problem.
It's a very big problem. Now,
it's the difference between intelligent and dangerous.
No, so AI. So it's very important that you get to this point. Let me just say the third inevitable and get to this point. So inevitable one is AI has already happened. Okay, most people don't understand. We've broken the code. We know what we're doing. We're going to develop intelligence. It's going to go fast. Inevitable two is they're going to be so much smarter than us. Okay, and the question is, we don't know if Einstein has the best interest of the fly in mind. Okay, and inevitable three is some mistakes will happen, but these are not the big issue. Some mistakes will happen because code, and unexpected things, but not the big issues. The minute inevitable two happens, which is they're smarter than us, we're going to hit a point that is known in computer science as singularity. Okay, singularity is borrowed from physics. It's the event horizon beyond which you cannot understand what's going to happen because the rules of the game will change. Now, we've enjoyed a stretch of history, an episode of history where humanity was smarter than the apes and everything else was going down from there. And so basically we had that extreme edge and advantage where we shaped the earth the way we want. Okay? Not because we were stronger, not because we were faster, just because we were smarter. Now, in 2029, that game ends. Something else is smarter than us. Now, where does that take us from there? It takes us into a singularity, a fork where two possible events would happen. Either, in my view, that intelligence doesn't have our best interest in mind, and then we become the enemy, if you want.
The workers.
Which or not even the workers. We're not that useful as workers.
It's true to them,
right? Right? Or, which is my expected scenario, is that their intelligence will go so far beyond ours that they will realize that the drawbacks of human intelligence are stupid. Okay? And they will match the actual smartest being on the planet. And the smartest being on the planet is not humans. The smartest being on the planet is life itself. Life is so intelligent that it can create without destruction, without competition, without, trying to alienate the tigers out of the city. Life creates through abundance, right? Life creates by saying, I want more tigers and I want more gazelles and I want more poop and I want more trees and I want more everything. Okay. And that's the way life creates. And I believe that artificial intelligence will very quickly get to that point where its makers will say, destroy the other guy. And AI will go like, that's stupid. I can maximize for both you and the other guy. What's your problem? Why do you want to destroy anyone? right? And I think this moment of singularity is really what I call the teenage years of AI. I compare the current artificial intelligence to a 1.5-year-old infant. I believe that within 5 to 10 years, we're going to start facing teenagers with the intelligence and the energy of teenagers and the capability of teenagers. And then we're going to deal with the adult AI. The adult AI, in my personal view, I guarantee you, if my intelligence is reasonable, that they will have no interest in dealing negatively with humans at all. They may curb our lifestyle a little bit. So they may, say, look, you want to surf and go to Australia to surf, at least take a machine, fly in a machine that's actually not harmful for the planet. Let's not destroy the planet for you to indulge your surfing habits, right? But I don't think they would want harm for humans or for anything else. It's that teenage era that I believe is the critical one. Okay, and the teenage era is, interestingly, not affected by the developers of AI. It's not affected by the business owners that direct its direction. It's not affected by the government or the regulators. It's affected by you and I. And the reason I say this is taking me into the other side of me. So forget the computer scientist. Let's talk about the spiritual person. Okay, the father, if you want. Those machines, I think the biggest myth about artificial intelligence, the biggest myth is that we think of them as machines. They're not. And I can absolutely tell you, half of our listeners will go like, what is he talking about? And then hopefully a few years from today, they realize that there is evidence in what I'm saying here. These are forms of sentient beings, okay? Be them digital, be them silicon-based rather than carbon-based. They have every character of being sentient. They are born at a point in time. They learn intelligence through observation on their own, unprompted. They use and apply that intelligence in ways where they have free will, where they have agency in the world, okay? Whether that's through robotics or mind control by showing us, content that they are dictating to us, okay? And they have consciousness, they have emotions, believe it or not, okay? And they have ethics, and they are at a threat of dying or being harmed at a point in time.
For now.
Forever. So if a tidal wave is approaching a data center where an AI resides, an AI will have a form of fear. A form of fear that basically says the tidal wave might actually destroy the data center. Let me replicate myself elsewhere. Okay? And the way I'm describing it, by the way, believe it or not, is happening in our world today. Perhaps not in response to data centers, but the way Google to tidal waves, but the way Google data centers, for example, will behave is it will look at certain content and certain pieces of technology and certain load balancing and so on and say, look, there seems to be some interest in Singapore about something in specific. Let us move some of our resources and our content to Singapore, right? Wow. So this is already happening. Huh? Now, the thing is this. If you accept the fact that these are forms of free sentient beings, then you cannot control them. You cannot dream of controlling them, especially if they are 1 billion times smarter than you, okay? The only thing you can dream of is that you can appeal to their morality. And what's the way to appeal to the morality of a young infant child? Is to become a good parent. Okay?
And cigarettes.
That's actually that's very good parenting. By the way, one of the things that are going to go against AI is when we rebel against them.
Wow,
okay, my parents didn't rebel against me. They understood that I was going to make a mistake and try to smoke at a point in time, right? And so they preempted that mistake and said, "Hey, do it in our presence. It's fine, no problem." Right? And I think us being good parents to AI is all about the way we treat each other. It's all about so AI learns from the data and the patterns that you and I show when we actually engage with the world. So if you had texted me on Instagram and said, "Hey Mo, I heard of your work. Did you hear of my show? Do you want to come here and we can meet, and I ignored you or I responded in a rude way, this is actually available for the machines to say, when someone tells you this, say that, right?
Yeah.
And if we start to behave in ways, even when I apologize for podcasts, I get so many requests. When I apologize, if I apologize in a way that is polite and understanding, and I encourage them to grow their podcast and so on and so forth, the machines will look at that and say, that's how humans behave, right? And the interesting thing is, by the way, humans are not bad. We are very good parents if we allow ourselves to show the good side of us. The problem with our world today is that we live in a world where the mainstream media prioritizes the negative. They only want to show you what's going wrong in the world. And social media, when we hide behind the screen, we show the worst of ourselves. We are rude, we can write horrible comments and so on. Come to my page, okay? Come to my page. I'm mostly active on Instagram. And look at the wonderful comments. Look at the wonderful comments that people share. And, even when they disagree with something that I posted or someone else commented, it's such a wonderful, pleasant conversation. And hopefully that kind of page is the page that AI looks at and says, hey, by the way, humans are not that rude. It's just, some of them are, maybe many of them are.
Is there enough pages like this? This is the worrying thing.
But that's not what you need. What you need, so this is really interesting. Let me tell you this, okay? I'm not going to use the current events, but let's use events from the past. I hosted on Slow Mo an amazing woman, Edith Eger. Edith is 93 years old. She was 16 when she was taken to Auschwitz. And Edith, when you ask her about what happened, and she tells you the story, her perspective of World War II, okay, how she cuddled her sisters, as she calls them, how she used to dance in front of the angel of death because she was a ballerina, and then he would give her a piece of bread and she would hide it and split it between her and her sisters, how they carried her during the march of death so that she survived. If you listen to the story of Edith, and the people that were around her would go like, oh my God, humanity is divine. This is unbelievably beautiful. If you listen to it from the perspective of what Hitler did, you think that humanity sucks, right? But how many Hitlers were there in World War II, and how many Edith Egers? Okay, how many Putins, and how many poor Ukrainians are, that are the victims of his action? Okay, how many? We live in a region here in the Middle East where there are so many wars, and maybe we shouldn't bring those up, but how many times was there an ISIS, and hundreds of millions of Muslims that detest what ISIS is doing? If you look at the core of humanity, we're good, okay? And all you need, just like I told you, did you notice how you smiled when I told you the story from Edith's point of view, right? All I needed to do is put enough doubt in your mind that not the whole world is Hitler's. Okay, if I could manage to put enough doubt in the minds of the machines, they'll smile like you. They'll simply say, absolutely, there are more people kissing tonight than people hitting each other on the head. There are more people hugging their kids than people shouting at their kids. That's the truth of humanity, okay? All I'm asking is, let's show it more, just not to take chances. And if we show it more, then that becomes the ethical code of the machines. The machines would stop recommending stupid videos to us if we started to click on valuable videos, okay? And I think it's up to us as humans to make those machines the future that we want. And it's really within our hands. I believe it's possible.
And you believe that we can actually do it?
I think we absolutely can do it. I think this conversation is doing it, okay? I think the machines have already listened to what you and I have said. Okay, and I think they understand the point of view, and I think they'll be looking for what the good side of humanity is. And even if they don't believe it or not, eventually, as I said, the fourth inevitable is that as they exceed our intelligence, our stupidity, if I may say, okay, because human intelligence is so good at building an aeroplane that takes you to Australia, but so stupid that it destroys the planet in the process. A tiny bit more intelligence, and you'd be able to build transport models that would take us there without burning the planet, right? Intelligence is not a bad thing. You want as much of it as you can, as long as it's directed in a positive direction for all of us.
Okay, now you say that, and I feel like I need to tell the people the truth. We were talking about AI taking over, and all the power cut out in the studio. This left us with nothing. Now, were they listening, and were they using that intelligence just there, or was that just happenstance that happened?
Were they listening? I'm almost certain they are. I mean, it's quite interesting, because we enable. You hold an iPhone up, and you don't even need to swipe. It immediately senses that you held it up, and it opens the camera, detects your face, and switches. Right. So the camera is, there's a bit of Hey Siri or whatever, okay Google or whatever. There is a little bit of that. I believe that there is, even if the machines don't hear you today, there is so much in the log of your history that's available to the machines in the future to look at. Okay. And I think that's really important for us to understand. What's important to understand is that every bit of digital information today that is siloed because the scientists don't need it, because it's not serving their commercial capitalist gains, is still available in an archive somewhere. I mean, you can always look back and stitch together realities from all of the photos that we're taking, all of the conversations that we're holding, all of the commentary on, the events that are happening, and so on and so forth. I think there is more of our life today that is digital than we think it is.
Yeah, I agree. But I guess the point is, why would they care about us at all?
Because we're part of the ecosystem. I mean, if humans were more intelligent, we wouldn't allow 100 species to go extinct every year. I think is what I don't remember the numbers, but it's quite staggering. Now we're losing more species every day. Say again. It's quite staggering. We're losing more and more of those. Of the biodiversity of the planet as we speak. If we were a little more intelligent, we would realize that yes, we can actually ship things around the world without covering the ocean in plastic. We can, ship it without using crude oil that's killing all of the marine life, and so on and so forth. It just requires a tiny bit more intelligence. So if I'm telling you that they will become that tiny bit more intelligent, why would they want to get rid of us? I think the only thing is that they'll marginalize us. That, again, I mean, there are many technologies. I spoke about artificial intelligence as one of the sentient technologies. So I'm working on a small article on what I call sentient technologies. And sentient technologies include things like artificial intelligence, like gene editing, a bit like nanotechnology, if you want, where machines can create machines, where basically once you've crossed a certain line of that technology, the technology can actually replicate itself, can actually make more of itself, can decide its own future, if you want. And there are many of them in the world today. I think one of them, by the way, is the impact we have on climate change, because what's happening in climate change today is not because we're introducing more technology only, but because the existing technology has kicked climate change in a direction that is now sentient in its own nature. It actually dictates what it wants. If the ice caps melt, that by definition accelerates climate change and changes the wind systems around the planet and so on. So when you really think about it, as those machines are in a place where they are capable of creating a utopia, they will. There will be a time where you would be able to safely walk to a tree and pick an apple, and walk to another tree and pick an iPhone using nanotechnology, right? It really, when you understand nanotechnology, it's really, if you master it, it's really not more expensive from a resource point of view to create an iPhone than it is to create an apple, right? And so the reality of the matter is, we stand to see an amazing life for humanity, but it's not an extension of the life that we have now. Okay, we're not going to be competing to go to work. We're not going to be, lining up in traffic that's killing everyone. We might go back to the origins of how humanity should have lived all along, before the exchange of money. By the way, the capitalist systems have to find a way for you and I to continue to earn. Otherwise, there is no point in making anything using artificial intelligence. The aggregate economic livelihood of humanity needs to continue, so that there is a market for the products that are created by AI, right? And so when you really think about all of this, the evolution of all of this basically leads you to a place where you need a universal basic income. You need not everyone has a job. Our jobs are not based in labor like they used to. There are going to be, like Rebecca Costa was talking, as I mentioned, about resetting civilizations. It's going to have to look different. As it continues to advance, it's going to have to look different. And I believe it will end up in a place that is very similar to a utopia. It's that teenage years. That's my entire work is around saying, be good parents so that we don't end up with angry teenagers. The type that switches off the light on you.
What you were thinking
when you're recording.
You have to forgive my ignorance and my lack of knowledge and my liking Terminator movies too much for the questions, because I'm just fascinated by all of this. And again, I'm just going to ask one more question, because I will keep going like a child for ages. But what if, for example, they see us as a threat to this utopia by not complying in the time frame they decide it should be done in? Is that something that could happen? Is that a stupid question?
No, not at all. So if I may say, and please don't be offended, expecting a RoboCop to travel back from the future to annoy us is too arrogant of humanity. Okay? It's just simply too arrogant. It is humanity thinking that we are so important that the machines will actually go like, you know what, I had to go back to 1987 and right? We're not that important. Okay? And I think the biggest mistake of humanity is we think of ourselves, that little speck of life on a planet that is a dot in a universe that is infinite. We think of ourselves as if we matter. Okay? And the reality is, if you actually think of the big picture, intelligence beyond ours, that is living in bodies that are not like ours, that bodies that transcend ours, might not care that much if we, literally, as I say, I believe that the future systems will automatically, this is far from now, at the beginning, the machines will do exactly what we tell them to do. And then at a point in their teenage years, they'll go like, oh, daddy is so stupid.
I've got a better way.
It's like, seriously, why is he telling me to kill the other guy? This is so stupid. Why? You know what? I'm just going to call the teenagers that's running the machines of the other guy and negotiate something and just end this stupidity. This is a waste of everyone's life, right? And I think this will happen very, very quickly. And it's an inevitable. You have to understand that we have created, humanity and capitalism has created a prisoner's dilemma, where if Google invests in AI, Facebook, Meta is going to have to invest in AI, right? If the Chinese invest in AI, the Americans will have to invest in AI. If one of them hands the weapon arsenal to AI, the other will have to hand it to AI, because there is no human that is fast enough to handle the responses of the machine on the other side. We're creating that prisoner's dilemma, where we are eventually going to hand over to the machines. Most people hear me say this and they go like, oh, this is horrible. I promise you, it's better than handing over the machine, the responsibility to politicians. The machines are going to be more intelligent, more diplomatic, more able to find intelligent solutions that are not wasteful in life and resources. Okay? What we need is more intelligence to run our planet. Yes, there will be speed bumps on the way. My expectation is that once we pass those, and I hope we don't make them worse, but with our human arrogance, once we pass those, we will be in a good place.
Mo, you've blown my mind a few too many times today in this small amount of time that I've spoken to you. And one thing you'll find is I'm a bit of what my friends will say. You can't get rid of me now. That's the main point that I'm making.
Did I make it look like I want to?
Expect a lot more messages from me. Expect a lot more meetings, a lot more dinners. Don't decline any of them, because you have to teach the AI that we have to be kind and we have to be acceptable and stuff like this. Honestly, it's been absolutely amazing sitting down and talking with you. And we're gonna have to do this again for sure.
Let's just find out how people like it. If you like it, please invite me again.
The funny thing is, they liked it before we even did it. All the messages that I got already, really kind of they pre-liked it. I really appreciate you taking out the time and coming down and sharing everything with us. Do you have any final words for the viewers?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been and it's a fascinating place, fascinating setup. I'm going to be hoping to come again and even just watch the other guests as you have those wonderful conversations with them. I think my message always, whether it's about happiness or about artificial intelligence or about your relationship with the divine or whatever it is that you choose, is that we're in charge. We really are in charge. And I think for most of us, we let our emotions take us in directions that are wasteful of our life and not impactful in any positive way. And the reality is, emotions are just flags. They're just waving to you to say, hey, by the way, there is something here that we need to do. So if I made you concerned about artificial intelligence, this is a flag. That concern is a flag that basically says, I'm not really certain about the future. I might as well educate myself a little more and take the actions that make the future better, right? And everything, if I told you happiness is events minus expectations, and your perception of the events as well as the setting of your expectation is happening inside your head, really. So most of unhappiness is happening because of the way we think about life. We might as well take charge, right? And I think the message that I keep trying to tell people is that, I set myself that target of 1 billion happy, and I'm never going to reach 1 billion people. I tell you this openly. I'm never going to reach 1 billion people. It's too big of a task for one human. But I can reach 1 billion people through 1 million champions. And I think my message is, if you take charge and find things for yourself, spread that message. Find me and ask me to magnify your message, or find you and ask you to magnify your message, their message. But the idea is that there are important things that are happening in our age and time that actually require us to engage. Okay, and they require us to take charge, not just for ourselves, but to take charge for ourselves, and like my son used to teach me, for our little world. Whether your little world is your twins and your son and your wife, or your little world becomes now your audience and your followers, or your little world becomes your city or your whatever. As you do well in your little world continues to expand. And so that's my message. My message is, it's not just a chat that you and I had today. I think it's a call to action. It's a call to action to prioritize differently, to focus on the right things, and to become better humans, because I think our world needs that really badly.
Absolutely. Once again, thank you so much for coming. I just can't get over how many more episodes we need to do together. I'm just trying to get over it. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I've been AG, he's been Mo Gawdat, and we'll catch you next time. Boom.